All right, on the Outer Fans, welcome to our tipping video for round 5. A big round, Thursday right through to Monday, with 2 games on the Friday, being Good Friday. So plenty of action going on, plenty of days to enjoy football. Gus is here, I'm here, and Lemons is here. Lemons, would you like to run us through the leaderboard?
I would rather not if I had the the choice, but I guess I'm obligated to do so at this point. Gus had a great week this week, so he put his first winning week together with 6 correct tips.
I'm coming.
Yep. Tom, you were quite...
Can you smell what Gus is cooking?
You were quite close behind him, Tom, with 5, and I was an absolute country mile away from anything with 3 tips. 3 tips! I don't even know how I did that. So anyway, I've got silly hat.
It's almost impressive that you've done that. To be honest.
It is, and yeah, I've got my silly hat, which is it's a raccoon hat, I believe.
How many times is that now with that raccoon?
No, he hasn't done the raccoon
This
yet.
is my first.
Have you done the raccoon?
No, last time
I was just going to comment on how many silly hats Lemons has.
I've got a lot. Yeah, I've done a sombrero, and I've done the pink cowboy hat, and now I've got the raccoon.
You're going to have to go out and buy a few more, I think.
I've still got a couple more backups. I didn't think I'd be burning through them this quickly, but apparently so.
You might have to get down to Savers and, just grab a huge haul of them.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll get into it. Thursday night footy, Good Friday Eve. This is a traditional game now. Brisbane versus Collingwood at the Gabba. Some big ins for Collingwood. They're bringing back Taylor Adams, Jordan De Goey, a couple of talls as well. I think Cox is back in, and Roughhead. So some good players, but they will not be good enough. I don't think I'm going to be tipping against Brisbane at the Gabba at all this year, and certainly not when they're playing Collingwood, so Brisbane.
Yeah, it would be pretty weird to tip Collingwood at the Gabatoir at this point, especially on their performance last week or in the last 2 weeks, really. I do have to apologise too for wearing the same suit as I was wearing the other day on the show. I've just been on a good 48-hour bender, so it's been great. But
classic government workers.
Even post bender, I'm still going to tip Brisbane.
That would be quite the bender if you ended up in Collingwood.
That would really define the bender if that happened.
I'm also going to go with the Lions. I feel like it feels like an easy tip, which makes me scared that it's going to be.
Lemons is just second guessing himself constantly now.
At this point, I feel like every tip seems like the obvious tip, and therefore I should tip the opposite of it. But I'm not going to do that for this one. I'm also going to go the Brisbane Lions. It feels pretty comfortable, I would say.
All right, Friday, Arvo, North Melbourne versus the Bulldogs. This is the year after the great crime against humanity that occurred when the Dogs beat North Melbourne by 110 points and Josh Bruce kicked 10. Look, the Dogs are not in good form, as we talked about on the main body of the show, but impossible to tip against them here, I think, after what we've seen in their recent period. So I'm going to tip the Dogs over North.
Yeah, I think this is maybe a slight banana peel game just because I think the Dogs' confidence is pretty low and North Melbourne maybe turned a bit of a corner last week with their form, but not quite enough to tip. Yeah, North. I was still going to tip the Dogs. And we should point out that this game is on at 4:20, which doesn't happen too often in the AFL.
Yep. I am also going to tip the Western Bulldogs to beat North Melbourne at this game. I feel like there's just such a talent discrepancy. It's hard to think that the Bulldogs would lose, which probably means they are going to lose. But anyway, we'll go with the Doggies for this one.
West Coast versus Sydney, Optus Stadium. This is also on Friday night. Look, West Coast had a great win against Collingwood. We didn't really have a chance to talk about that on the main body this week, but they certainly had a very spirited win. Sydney just got over the line against North. So I made it a little bit more tricky by the fact that it is in Perth. But I think Sydney are one of those teams that tend to play pretty well everywhere. I don't think they'll be too daunted by going over to Optus Stadium. So I'm going to tip the Swans to beat Eagles.
In complete contradiction to what I said on the podcast, where I said that I thought Sydney was still a top 6 team, I actually think West Coast are going to win this game because they're getting a bunch of midfield players back. They're getting Kelly back. I think Shuey potentially, Yo coming back in, and that's massive. That's really been the big problem for them is just around the ball. Like they've had to play Willie Rioli and Jermaine Jones and stuff like that in the midfield. So getting those 3 back in, even if we only get a half from Shuey, because that's probably all we can expect at this point. I think at home they can beat Sydney, so I'm going to tip the Eagles.
I'm going to continue my ways of tipping against Western Australian teams at every possible moment.
How's that going for you?
Yeah, not too well. I might have to reassess my strategy at some point, but I'm not willing to give up on it just yet, and I am going to go with the Sydney Swans as well to win on a Friday night there. First game on Saturday, 1:45 at Marvel Stadium. It is St Kilda versus the Gold Coast Suns. Should be a good match. St Kilda are absolutely killing it at the moment. I don't know, did you guys see this coming? Was this to be expected? I feel like St Kilda have come out of absolutely nowhere and are absolutely on a tear. And I feel like because of that, I cannot tip against them. I'm going to go with the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the preseason show, I sort of was a bit more optimistic, I suppose is the word, rather than bullish about the Saints than Tom was. Just like we have to remember that St Kilda won a final, not last year, the year before. So they're not, the core of this team is not a bad side. I don't think that either of us expected them to be sitting 4th on the ladder after 4 games, but here we are. Gold Coast were good last week. They really brought the heat against Carlton, and Carlton really crumbled in their stoppage work. However, I think St Kilda has a broader avenue to goal than just in game style than what Carlton have sort of shown, who are so reliant on stoppage goals. So I'm going to tip the Saints in this one.
Yes, the Saints are red hot at the moment, and it's kind of like if they lose this game, it's very deflating because it's like, oh, okay, actually they're not that good. They just had a good few weeks, So they can't be losing to the Suns, particularly at Marvel, where they're surprisingly poor over the last sort of 18 months. I also think I'm looking forward to the Collins-King matchup because I think Sam Collins has been in fantastic form this year, and obviously we know that King has. But King's just a little bit taller for him, and so I think Collins might struggle to contain him aerially. And I think Saints
one can contain Max King. Love Max King. Big fan. Adelaide, Richmond. Do we really even need to go into this with Richmond in such a great crisis? No. Look, Adelaide were quite good against the Bombers. I think it's being understated, like how I actually looked at those teams before the Essendon Adelaide game and was like actually a little bit surprised that Essendon is favoured in this game just on the basis of who was playing for both sides. Like the experience difference was pretty significant. That is not going to be a problem for Richmond. If anything, they're too old. So I think the Tigers should win this game, even though it's in Adelaide. This is the sort of game where a team like Richmond just win. Like they're just experienced. They're good enough that their good players are playing well enough that they'll beat Adelaide. It's the top end teams that Richmond probably can't compete with for 120 minutes, not the teams like Adelaide. So Richmond for me.
Yeah, Adelaide, I think they're never, they're always challenged to beat them in the Adelaide Oval. But I think Richmond looked pretty good last week, and there's some more handy ins coming from all reports with Lawson and potentially even Lambert. So I think Richmond will win this one.
You nearly accidentally tipped Adelaide there.
I was about to write it down.
Lock it in.
Levens would have been cutting that in, I'll tell you what.
Look, I'm going to go against probably better judgment. I'm going to tip the Crows to win. I thought they looked so good at the game on the weekend against the Bombers, and maybe that was the Bombers looking bad more than Adelaide looking good. But I really think that Adelaide have found something there, and like Tex, as much as I might not like him as a person, is a very important player as a football player on the team, and he made a big difference, and I think that he is going to dominate against the Tigers. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Adelaide.
Can I just say, Lemons, the raccoon hat, beard, hair combo that you have going on now is...
It's not that silly, is it? It kind of looks all right.
Yeah, like, I think you should wear that all the time.
Yeah, except the silly part is that ain't no hat. That's a real raccoon that he went and killed in the Royal Gardens and stuck on his head.
Jesus.
Melbourne versus GWS, this one at the MCG. Similar to Brisbane at the Gabba. I mean, how could you tip against Melbourne at the MCG? We keep talking about the Giants' midfield being one of the best in the competition, and yet they
keep getting
really
beat.
win games based upon it. Yeah, so I think that I'm going to tip Melbourne in this one.
Well, I don't think I'm going to tip Melbourne. I am going to tip Melbourne because they're much better than the Giants. They're much better than everyone right now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there is a significant gap between them and the rest of the competition. Yeah, so the D's for me pretty comfortably.
Yep, I'm going to go with the D's as well. Do you reckon they can go undefeated? Is that a possibility, or is it just not a thing that happens in the AFL where a team could go undefeated for a whole season?
Yeah, there'll be a loss that they had to have at some point.
They'll get to like 8 weeks out from the finals if they haven't lost by then, and they'll just be like, oh, God, can we just get to the finals already? And they'll drop one to like Sydney in Sydney or something, or Geelong in Geelong. Or something like that.
I'll be tipping the Demons until that game then, I think.
Yeah.
They are.
I don't think you can tip against them. There's no point in doing that. But they will lose one. Carlton versus Port Adelaide. Carlton came crashing back to earth a little bit with a loss against the Suns. Kind of shown that if they lose clearance, then it's really hard for them to score, it seems, because if they don't score off stoppage, they don't really have a plan B. Port Adelaide are actually very strong at the stoppage. It's pretty much the only thing that they've been good at this season. Look, I would love to tip Port because it would just be hilarious to see the Carlton melts. But I think I'm going to have to... screw it. I'm tipping Port Adelaide. Paddy Cripps isn't playing. Port Adelaide are good. I think Robbie Gray potentially might be back. I think it's time. It's Port Adelaide's time. Go for it, Port.
This is I find this one really hard to tip because
it is.
Like, do you see Port Adelaide being 0-5? Like, they haven't been playing well, but they're not a 0-5 team. That's ridiculous. But then on the other hand, like, you know, they're playing at the MCG against Carlton, who are a much better team. I think that I'm going to go with Carlton because, you know, Port Adelaide are going to be missing their best defender, their best midfielder, and their best forward. And, you know, I think they're pretty reliant on those three guys, talking about Aaliyah, Wines and Dixon. And the stoppage dominance that they will have over Carlton with Cripps out might be balanced out a little bit with Wines out. So I'm going to go
I actually
with Carlton.
still think Boak is their best midfielder, just by the way.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I know
you.
I know what you're saying. Like, Wines won the Brownlow last year, but I still think Boak's better than him. Sorry, Lemons, go.
No, this one's a tough one to tip as well because like Carlton were on such a run that I feel like I just got on the train last week and they lost. So it was like one game too late.
The kiss of death, Lemons.
Yeah. So no, I'm going to go with Carlton. I think I'm going to go with Carlton, not for any real reason other than
Kiss of death.
Yeah, except that I want them to lose, so I might as well tip them. So there we go.
That's the way. That's the spirit.
All right. So the next game is Essendon versus the Fremantle Dockers on Sunday at 4:40 in the afternoon. It's at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah, it's not at 4:40 in the morning, Lee. Thanks for clarifying that, mate.
That'd be pretty interesting.
That would be a tough time. There's games all over the place this weekend, Tom. I'm just trying to be specific. This is a really tough one to tip as well. I'm going to go with the Bombers just because I'm going to go with the Bombers in any chance when they're not playing an amazing team, and Fremantle aren't an amazing team, despite the fact they're like third on the ladder currently. I think it's going to be a good game. Bombers showed something this week against Adelaide. Like, it was an exciting game with a lot of skill errors, but I think that getting the win, even if it is against a pretty bad team, is going to raise confidence. And I think Bombers should put it together and be 2-3 after a 0-3 start, which will be I'll be a lot happier with that as I was 2 weeks ago.
I'm going to tip Freo. I'm still pretty worried about Essendon. They're still 18th without the footy, which is what they were last year, and they are still that this year. And I think last year they were able to get away with it a bit because their offense was so good. But with Stringer and Merritt not playing, that offensive, weaponry is really reduced, and they kind of need to be better without the footy. So I just think Freo as well will be pretty fired up to get a win away, given that they've started the season well. They want to sort of formalise that, so I'm going with the Dockers.
Yeah, I think Freo were good against the Giants. It's the first game where you sort of watch them and say, they're a pretty good team. I think the first 3 weeks they weren't fabulous despite winning 2 games, but they were good against the Giants. Much as I said about the Adelaide game, Essendon is just gutted at the moment. I just don't think that they have the players who are going to be capable of beating anyone but the really bottom teams. So I'm going to tip Freo as well.
Last game in the round, Hawthorn versus Geelong. This is one of those classic games that no matter where they are on the ladder, ends up being a pretty good spectacle. Of course, these two teams have mostly been around the top of the ladder for the last
I was going to say, that's just such a misnomer, isn't
it? Traditional Easter Monday game. I think you've got to go with Geelong. They were obviously very impressive, as we touched on in the main body this week. And Hawthorn certainly, that slingshot thing didn't work at all on the weekend. So I think that Geelong will be too good across the park. But I expect a bit of a response. I think it'll be a tussle with Geelong to kind of clear the decks at the end and kick away.
Oh, it's such a tough one. I think I've tipped the Hawks wrong every week so far this season, so it makes me wonder. I think I'm going to go Geelong as well. They beat them in the grand final that year. What was it, 2007? Was that the first year they beat them in the grand final?
So last year you've been watching footy.
Yeah, so
Hawthorn beat Geelong in 2008.
Okay. Well, whatever it is, I'm going to go with Geelong anyway. I feel like
that's your logic. 14 years ago, they beat them in the previous year.
These two teams played previously, and the result, I can't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember what year it happened.
Geelong in a landslide, I feel.
Hawthorn, no chance. Geelong are going to win very comfortably, I think.
All right. Wonderful. So that's it for our tips this week, guys. Look back to the main body next week to find out the results of these games. You might find them out before then. Anything's possible. But the analysis and the full-blown review, you won't get anywhere else.
I better go off and have a nap now because of my 48-hour bender. Is probably
have a Valium, mate.
Yeah, no worries. All right, see you, boys. Thanks very much. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.